In a small town in the state of Massachusetts, in the heart of the United States, Christmas had always been a time of warm celebration and unity. The snow-covered streets looked like postcard scenes, with meticulously decorated houses and trees glowing behind windows. However, for the Henderson family, Christmas that year promised to be different. The Hendersons were known for their grand Christmas parties, but 2023 had been a challenging year. Robert Henderson, the family patriarch, faced financial troubles after a disastrous investment, and Martha, his wife, was battling a severe illness. As the holiday season arrived, the idea of a traditional Christmas dinner seemed unlikely. But days before Christmas, a mysterious invitation arrived in the mail. The envelope had no sender, only a golden seal displaying an image of an ornate chalice. Inside was a short and enigmatic message. "You are invited to Christmas dinner at the Windsor House. Bring your family and prepare for an unforgettable night." The Windsors were a reclusive family living in a vast mansion on the highest hill in town. For years, rumors about the mysteries of that place circulated among the locals. Some said the house was haunted. Others claimed the Windsors were hiding a dark secret. Despite their hesitations, the invitation was accepted. For the Hendersons, the promise of an opulent feast was irresistible, even if surrounded by mystery. Deep down, there was an uncontrollable curiosity. What could the Windsors possibly want with them? Christmas night arrived. A light snowstorm painted the landscape white as the Hendersons drove up the hill in their old car. The Windsor mansion emerged from the darkness, illuminated by an aura of golden light. It looked like a castle out of a Gothic tale, with its towering spires and narrow windows that seemed like watchful eyes. Upon arrival, a stern-looking man greeted them at the gate. He didn't give his name, but his rigid posture and piercing gaze made it clear he was more than just a butler. He led them through a long entrance lined with dead trees, their bare branches reaching skyward like outstretched hands. Inside the mansion, the warmth contrasted with the cold outside. A massive hall decorated with garlands, candles, and a majestic Christmas tree dominated the space. Other families were present, but strangely, no one seemed to know each other. The murmur of conversations was low, as though everyone felt the weight of something inexplicable. The Hendersons were shown to their seats at a long, dark wooden table. The furniture was adorned with intricate carvings, and every detail seemed to tell a story. At the center of the table was a peculiar centerpiece, a golden chalice resembling the seal on the invitation. A strange light emanated from it, almost hypnotic. Once everyone was seated, the doors to the hall opened. The Windsors entered, and silence filled the room. Leading them was Jonathan Windsor, a tall man with graying hair and an intense gaze. Beside him, his wife, Evelyn, exuded a cold, austere beauty, and their teenage twin seemed eerily synchronized in every movement. Jonathan spoke with a voice that seemed to fill the entire space. "Welcome to our dinner. It is an honor to have you here. Tonight, we celebrate not only Christmas, but also the importance of unity and sacrifice." His words were enigmatic, but his tone was warm, almost paternal. The meal began with soup served in finely decorated porcelain bowls. As the courses followed, each more sumptuous than the last, the guests began to relax. Yet something remained odd. The Windsors didn't eat. Jonathan and Evelyn merely observed, while the twins smiled enigmatically. As the evening progressed, Jonathan stood again. "Before we continue, I'd like to share an old family tradition. Each of you will have the opportunity to drink from the golden chalice. It represents the essence of the Christmas spirit. By doing so, you will join us in something eternal." His gaze swept over the guests, and the silence became almost unbearable. The first to accept the chalice were the Johnsons, a small family who seemed hesitant but curious. As soon as the father, Michael, took a sip, something changed in his expression. He seemed revitalized, as if an invisible weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The other family members followed suit, and a peculiar glow appeared in their eyes. The Hendersons watched intently. Robert, ever the skeptic, whispered to Martha, "This is some kind of trick. We don't know what's in there, Martha, however, seemed intrigued, almost drawn to the idea. "What if it's something good, Robert? Something that could help us?" Her voice was laden with hope, an emotion she hadn't felt in months. When the chalice reached them, the tension peaked. Jonathan watched expectantly, but didn't press them. Robert reluctantly held the object. It felt heavier than expected, as if it carried more than just liquid. He looked at Martha, who gave a slight nod, and finally took a small sip. The liquid in the chalice had a peculiar taste, indescribable. It was both sweet and bitter, like mixed memories of joy and sorrow. As he swallowed, Robert felt a wave of emotions coursing through his body. Memories of his childhood surfaced, followed by images of recent struggles. It was as if his soul were being unraveled. The other family members followed suit. Each seemed to experience something unique, but equally intense. However, when the last sip was taken, a sense of unease settled over the room. Jonathan smiled, but it was a smile that brought no comfort. "Now, you are part of our story." The twins stood and began to sing a melody in a strange language, almost hypnotic. The candles in the hall seemed to flicker, and the atmosphere shifted. A sense of confinement enveloped the space. The guests realized the doors were locked. What had once seemed like a festive dinner now felt like a trap. Jonathan Windsor began to slowly walk across the hall, as the guests, now aware of the isolation, exchanged uneasy glances. "Let me tell you an old story," he began, his voice heavy with gravity. "This house has a legacy that dates back centuries. Every generation of our family has preserved a tradition, and you have been chosen to take part in it." The Hendersons, like the other guests, remained silent, caught between curiosity and fear. Jonathan continued, "The chalice you drank from contains more than just a special wine. It holds the essence of our origins. Each of you is now connected to us, not just tonight, but forever." As he spoke, the twins approached the centerpiece of the table. They removed a cover that hid something resembling a symbol carved into wood. It was an intricate circle, with figures that appeared human but disproportionate, like mythical beings in an eternal cycle of movement. The piece glowed with a faint light, and a low, pulsating sound filled the room. Evelyn Windsor finally spoke, her voice sounding like a distant echo. "This feast is more than just a banquet. It is a ritual. You have become part of the binding circle, a tradition that protects our family and keeps our legacy alive." She pointed to the carved circle, explaining that each figure represented someone who had participated in the ritual over the years. The guests began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. A woman at the back of the table, visibly nervous, asked, "What happens to us now?" Jonathan calmly responded, "You have nothing to fear. This is a gift. You will not only become part of history, but will ensure the continuity of our lineage." The Hendersons exchanged glances, feeling the weight of the situation. Robert whispered to Martha, "We need to get out of here." But before they could move, Jonathan added, "Those who try to break the circle will face consequences that even Christmas cannot forgive." As Jonathan spoke, the light from the circle grew brighter, and one of the carved figures began to shine intensely. Then, Michael Johnson, the man who had drunk first, fell to his knees. His family rushed to help him, but he disappeared before their eyes, dissolving into a golden mist that was absorbed by the circle. Screams filled the hall. Panic set in as the guests began running toward the doors, but they were locked. The twins watched the scene with cold smiles, while Evelyn remained still, as if in a trance. Robert Henderson tried to calm the others, but his hands were trembling. He approached Jonathan, demanding an explanation. "What did you do to him? Where is he?" Jonathan answered with unsettling calm. "He is now part of the cycle. His essence will strengthen our family for generations." Tension mounted. Some guests began searching for windows or any possible escape, but it was as if the mansion had come alive, closing all routes of escape. A young woman, desperate, tried to break one of the windows with a candelabra, but the glass didn't even crack. Meanwhile, Robert led a small group trying to open the main doors. He noticed the lock mechanism was old, perhaps manipulable, and asked for help from Martha and their oldest son, David. They worked together as the other guests watched in hope. Jonathan observed everything with curiosity. "You think you can escape? This mansion is protected by something far beyond your understanding." Still, Robert pressed on, determined to save his family. As Robert struggled to open the door, Evelyn began recounting the true story of the Windsor tradition. She spoke of a pact made centuries ago by an ancestor in exchange for eternal prosperity. The price was an annual sacrifice of souls on Christmas night. "You weren't chosen by accident," she said. "Each of you carries something that strengthens our circle. Courage, love, ambition, purity. These are the qualities that feed our legacy." The guests realized their lives were at stake. Some tried to confront the Windsors, but the presence of the twins, who now appeared more than human, made them hesitate. Amidst the chaos, Martha noticed the ritual seemed focused on the golden chalice. She began observing how it reacted to the actions of the others. Finally, she took the chalice and faced Jonathan. "If all of this is about power and sacrifice, why not end it with the chalice?" Jonathan smiled. "You think it's that simple? The chalice is just a channel. The true power lies in the circle and those who feed it." Martha, however, didn't give up. She knew she needed to find a way to interrupt the ritual and save her family. Tension peaked when Robert finally managed to unlock the main door. However, when he opened it, they found only an empty darkness, as if the outside world had vanished. It was a complete trap. At that moment, Martha made a desperate decision. She approached the circle with the chalice in hand and threw it against the central symbol. A burst of light flooded the hall, and the twins screamed in ways that seemed inhuman. Jonathan and Evelyn tried to stop the process, but it was too late. The circle began to unravel, and the guests felt something was changing. As the circle collapsed, the carved figures began to disappear, and the souls that had been absorbed over the years seemed to emerge. One by one, the guests who had been consumed began to reappear, confused but alive. The Windsors, on the other hand, began aging rapidly, as if the time they had accumulated was finally taking its toll. Jonathan fell to his knees, looking at Martha with a mix of anger and respect. When the circle finally disintegrated, the mansion began to shake, as if it were alive and about to collapse under its own weight. The floor cracked in several places, and the air was filled with a deep, deafening hum. Robert grabbed Martha, pulling her away from the center of the room. "We need to get out now!" The guests, who had been paralyzed with fear, began moving frantically toward the doors. This time, the once locked entrances opened with a bang, revealing the snow-covered landscape outside. The house, however, seemed reluctant to let them go. The walls leaned and the corridors shifted, as if trying to trap the escapees. The Hendersons ran toward the exit along with other guests, dodging falling ceiling debris and the floor opening in cracks. Jonathan, Evelyn, and the twins remained in the center of the circle, now defenseless and aging rapidly. Their expressions alternated between desperation and resignation. The last guests exited through the front door, and as they crossed the threshold, the mansion began to collapse completely. A final scream from the Windsors echoed as the building imploded, swallowed by a golden light that scattered into the sky like sparks in a fireworks display. The snowstorm stopped, and the world outside seemed unnaturally calm. The survivors gathered in silence, looking at the empty space where the mansion had once stood. Robert embraced Martha and their children, feeling a wave of relief mixed with disbelief. Among the other guests, some cried, while others just stared at the horizon, still processing what they had lived through. Martha held Robert's arm and whispered, "I felt something when I threw the chalice, as if a part of me was still inside there." He shook his head, trying to push the thought away. "It doesn't matter what it was, it's over. We're together, and that's what matters." In the days that followed, the small town was filled with rumors about the disappearance of the Windsor mansion. Reports of strange phenomena, lights in the sky, shadows that seemed to move on their own, began to circulate. The local police investigated the case, but all they found was an empty lot covered with untouched snow. The Hendersons tried to return to normal life, but the event marked them deeply. Robert decided to sell the family home and move to a larger city, seeking a fresh start. Martha, for her part, continued to feel an inexplicable connection to the Windsors, as if something from that night still bound her to the circle. 1 year later, on Christmas Eve, Martha found a small package left at the door of her new home. Inside was a fragment of the golden chalice, glowing softly. A note accompanied it, with handwriting she immediately recognized as Jonathan Windsor's. The cycle cannot be broken. She hid the fragment from her family, trying to ignore the weight of the words. But that night, she had strange dreams of the mansion and the faces of the Windsors. When she woke up, the fragment seemed brighter, almost pulsating with life. The next morning, as the family opened presents around the Christmas tree, Martha noticed something odd. The bells of the local church clock were ringing erratically, as if marking a countdown. The fragment of the chalice hidden in her drawer seemed to be radiating increasing warmth. Looking out the window, she saw a familiar figure in the snow-covered street. Evelyn Windsor, now looking young, waved at her with a cold smile. Martha closed her eyes, trying to shake off the vision, but deep down she knew the cycle was far from over. The last Christmas supper wasn't just a night of horror and mystery. It revealed something much greater: the bonds that connect human choices to destiny, and how the actions of a moment can reverberate through generations. The Hendersons escaped with their lives, but not with their freedom. The cycle continued, and its shadow hung over all who had been touched by it. This story reminds us that not everything that glitters is gold, and that buried secrets can emerge when we least expect them. May we cherish the true spirit of Christmas: unity, love, and genuine sacrifice, and never be seduced by empty promises, no matter how tempting they may be. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel for more stories of mystery and horror. Until next time, stay safe, and beware the darkness that lurks just beyond the light.